He's joined by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear brothers and sisters, let us go into the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. Please be sure to follow Joe and I on social media, wherever you find us, Facebook, YouTube, the whole 9 yards. And we're obviously always very pleased and honored to be joining you on the Crusade Channel. Just want to give everybody a heads up. You need to become a member of the Crusade Channel. And just to wet your whistle a little bit, we have some new releases on the Crusade Channel. And as a Founders Pass member, you could have access to all of the amazing content that's on the channel. But just to give you an idea of the Mike Church Show, obviously the King Dude is the King Dude. Great segment. The COVID cabal is a shrinking violet. If we put it in the shadow of the new Christendom, that's with Dr. G.C. Dillsaver. Also, a friend of ours, John Horvat II. He's got episode number 5 of The Culture War, Si Qua Virtus, and Kennedy Hall. Kennedy Hall is now on the Crusade Channel. The Kennedy Profession, the tale of 2 Republicans, DeSantis and Rubio. Telling you, you don't want to miss this stuff. And you certainly don't want to miss the Frontline with Joe and Joe. So once again, thank you for joining us. We have a great show for you today. These are conversations, you know, Joe and I try to focus on all that nonsense that's going on out there. And as you know, give it our Jersey spin, you know, like a couple of goombas from Newark. But this stuff is all serious. You got, you know, Donald Trump was such a bad guy. He tried to protect nurses and doctors from having to perform abortions, and he filed a lawsuit against the Vermont Medical Center. Well, what do you think? Joe Biden, of course, ordered the DOJ to drop that lawsuit. Joe and I are going to talk about that. You got Cuomo. Oh, Lord. All you got to say is Cuomo. And I don't mean Chris. I mean Jefe up in Albany. Disgraziat. Haven't called him that in a while, Joe Resinello. I'm happy to call him that because he is a disgrace on all levels, particularly as a so-called Catholic, which I don't even know if he is. I know he was born that. But here's another guy. Look, man, he's fallen from grace, but we're going to talk about that because we all know that he's on his way out. But you want to know something? Is he? One has to ask oneself, is he on his way out? Because you know as well as I do, Democrats could do anything. They could do anything. And they get away with it. And mostly because of what? Abortion. Their stance on abortion. You got, listen to the I don't want to use the word on the Crusade Channel. The nerve of the teachers' unions are actually trying to sue a parent. They're suing a parent for asking too many pesky questions. We're going to talk about that. You got, voter ID is not a Republican thing. 90% of the American people, 90% of the American people want voter ID. It's that simple because it's common sense. You need ID to buy a bottle of Johnny Walker Black. You need an ID to get on an airplane. You need all this stuff, okay? But not to vote? Well, a lot of people, level-headed, commonsensical people say, no, you could show an ID. Gavin Newsome, let me tell you something, Joe Resinello, that dude's in trouble. That dude's in trouble. No, and I'm hoping to God, I'm hoping to Almighty God, and I don't know that I even probably agree with him on everything. I don't know, okay? But the bottom line is, Larry Elder is a guy who could beat Gavin Newsom. He is eminently beatable, okay? And why? Because of all the nonsense that goes on in California. You got the hypocrisy of the left. It was always Joe Resinello, Maxine Waters. She was always the one that really got the vein popping out of your head. Okay. Now it's this Cori Bush. You hear this woman?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Well, I wish I never heard of this woman. Okay. She's another angering person. Conservative movement should fight critical race theory. Joe and I fight that front. That is something that we hammer on. Critical race theory is racism, not reverse racism, not any other name you want to get. It's just straight up racism. It's a lie and it needs to be confronted as a lie, okay? And that's the bottom line. So we hope to get into everything tonight. Probably won't because, two long-winded Joes from New Jersey. Usually we get through what, Joe? About 3 stories because we keep on talking. But we're glad you're joining us here. So with all of that, let me kick it over to my brother, Joe Resinello.
So let's start off with something from the Federalist. As Joe mentioned, the Democrats are calling for Cuomo's resignation. Ever since the release of the New York Attorney General's report on Governor Cuomo's sexual harassing 11 women, Democrats have been quick to flaunt their outrage.
Of course they're outraged, Joe. I'm outraged.
That doesn't mean they plan, as Joe said, to act on their words. Joe Biden, though, said recently during a speech that Cuomo should resign, which I thought to be very interesting. But it's unclear whether, obviously, he's going to exert any pressure. And Jen Psaki was being quiet with regard to Cuomo being invited to the next governor's conference at the White House.
Does she ever tell the truth?
I'll be honest with you. I watch sometimes like her, like, like clips of it, mostly on Riley's the First. I get that feed and I'll watch like 3-minute clips. And dude, I don't envy that. Dude, she has to lie. I mean, and she's not even that good at it.
No.
I mean, like, do you know what I'm saying? Like,
what bothers me about
I actually feel like awkward for her.
Right. Well, I'm going to borrow a line from you. She makes me itch.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
she absolutely makes me itch. But I will say this: they accuse Kayleigh McEnany of lying. Kayleigh McEnany got up there into the lion's den with Jim Acosta and the rest of them throwing darts at her. Okay, and she held her own by providing facts and data. Okay, she didn't spin. She told the truth. All right, they said that she was a liar and everything else. In the meantime, she's got to confront them. This woman, Jen Psaki, she gets tossed softballs, and she still can't muster up enough to be honest and transparent with people. She makes me itch.
But even like every once in a while, you do get someone who asks her like a good question,
right?
And
she circles back.
Well, she doesn't. Like, I mean, at all address it. And sometimes you could even tell that she is uncomfortable almost with what she's saying.
Right.
But like, because it doesn't, like, it's so glaring.
Do you remember the movie True Romance? Did you see that back in the day?
Sure, I did.
All right. A lot of cursing in that movie. It's a movie but like I kind of try to avoid now. I try to avoid movies now like that. But there was a great scene with Christopher Walken and Dennis Hopper. But he goes into the, he's trying to interrogate Dennis Hopper. And Christopher Walken plays a gangster, and he's trying to get information out of Dennis Hopper. And he's talking to him about a tell. The tell, all right? Good gamblers know about the tell, okay? When you're lying, or in the case of playing poker, when you're bluffing, okay, there are things you do that you're not even aware of. And everybody knows this. Psychologists will tell you, you have a tell. Certain thing you do that reveals that you're probably lying or you're bluffing in some way. And a person like a good liar knows their tells. That's what makes a good liar. Like Bill Clinton knows his tells.
Well, you always tell that story when Clinton bit his tongue when he got caught.
Yeah, he got caught. The camera. They were at Ron Brown's funeral. Okay, Ron Brown, who mysteriously died in a plane crash. Okay, yeah, just like George Patton mysteriously died from the results of a car accident. Okay, and Bill Clinton's at the funeral. He's laughing it up with a bunch of guys, and they're talking on the side of the camera's on him and everything. And you see the clip. As soon as he realizes he's on camera, he bites his lip. He goes like that, like he's got that sad look on his face. The dude is a world-class liar.
Oh, Clinton was the best politician, dude,
of all time because he's a good liar. Okay, and lying is not allowed because it's a mortal sin. But you understand our point. Jen Psaki.
Oh no,
forget about being in Clinton's league. Nobody's really in his league, all right? Maybe except the devil himself. But Jen Psaki, so obviously that she's lying or that she's not addressing the question that a reporter asked her. And let's face it, she doesn't get very tough questions. She just doesn't. And she's got a pat answer ready to just skirt right around it.
Well, that's basically the name of the game. I mean, they pretty much probably give her those answers. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like if they ask this is what you say.
Joe, how dare you? Come on, CNN says she's so smart.
Yeah.
Jen Psaki, she's smart.
I mean, it's just like
you're dumb.
That's a sad thing.
Joe, you're dumb goombas from New Jersey. Jen Psaki, she went to the Ivy League. She's smart. No, she's terrible.
I actually looked. She went to William and Mary.
Okay, she went to William and Mary. Good school. She went to William and Mary.
I think it's a conservative school.
Well, what happened to her then?
I don't know, but I believe it is actually.
But when she's on that podium, to quote Charles Barkley, she is terrible. TRBL. Terrible. But let's get back to this Straziad.
Let's talk what Biden had to say about sexual harassment. He had some pretty strong words. He said, "Here's my position. A woman should be presumed to be telling the truth and should not be scapegoated and become victimized by her coming forth when she makes a statement about sexual harassment." Now, obviously, we all know about Tara Reid. that was not pursued by the media. We covered this a while ago. I mean, there was, I believe, an op-ed in the New York Times where someone said, I absolutely believe what Tara Reid has to say, but I'm going to vote for Joe Biden anyway. I mean, the hypocrisy is just absurd.
Right. But if I said I'm voting, see, now I want to bring up a point. Okay. And this will tie into Cuomo because he's going to get away with this, Joe Resinello. He will have a political future. Okay. He will have a political future. And the bottom line is, it'll be because no matter what he does, I guess sexually harassing in some way, groping, touching, unwanted, whatever, okay, of 11 women, well, guess what? They're going to move him forward. He might not get a position. He might have to go into hiding for a couple of years. He's still a relatively young guy, politically speaking, and he'll have a future. Why? Because of his position on abortion. That's why. And the women that say that he touched my breasts, he grabbed me here, he touched me there, he did this, he did that, those women won't matter. Joe Biden, the liar, yes, liar. Okay, Facebook and YouTube, Joe Biden's a liar. Okay, he said, here's my position. A woman should be presumed. Audrey Unverfurth in the Federalist has a good question. And Joe just said it. What about Tara Reid? Is she not to be presumed to be telling the truth? But yet Joe Biden got away with doing so. Were her accusations credible? But let me ask you this, Joe Resinello. Donald Trump got in the worst trouble. The worst trouble because he said, I could shoot somebody in the street. He'll still vote for me. Bill Clinton raped the woman. They still voted for him. He's still a hero of the left. Joe Biden did things that we're not going to describe on the front line with Joe and Joe on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. Okay, Joe Biden did things to Tara Reid. They let him skate. Evidently, a lot of people still voted for him. Okay. And Cuomo's going to get away with the same thing, Joe Resinello. And it's sad.
Well, know what it is? Obviously, Cuomo had aspirations to run for president. His father did as well. It's over, though. I don't think he's going to resign. But at the same time, I think it's done. Like when his time, comes, he will go away. He'll write a book. He'll be rich. He's already rich. But it's just the way it is. The thing I think that is shocking is how they eat their own. Isn't it like Cuomo in the very beginning of the COVID, scare?
Right.
He was like the darling.
Right.
The man was on television every single day.
They gave him an Emmy.
That's my point. I mean, it's amazing. That's the takeaway for me. And I mean, for anyone who hears my voice on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online, when you make a deal with the devil, so to speak, there's no honor among thieves. And that's the truth. I've seen that even in work, like in life, there is no like pact amongst people who are conniving. And I find it flabbergasting that they just threw him under the bus.
Right.
I
think I know what you're saying. I think sometimes what happens is, look, sometimes, Joe, they get so cold busted. I mean, that's the way we say it in Newark. You're cold busted. Okay. No, you get so cold busted in his case with the nursing homes. Okay. And then they threw him under the bus because to defend that in light of the evidence would be defending the indefensible. So they threw him under the bus. Now, with all this, okay, they're going to throw him under the bus. But again, they love Andrew Cuomo. They just don't like the fact that he got caught. That's what they don't love. So what are they going to do, Joe Resinello? What are they going to do? I'm going to set the stage for you. They get him in a back room and they say, Andy, come here. Come here, Andy. Sit down. We got to talk to you for a second. And he sits down. This could be, maybe they don't talk like that, but they say these words. Andy, sit down. Listen, you're going to resign. You're going to resign, my friend.
You think he's going to resign?
But don't worry about it. Well, here's a scenario. Don't worry about it. You're going to go into the wilderness for a couple of years, but then we're going to resurrect you. We're going to bring you back. We're going to get our allies in the media, the people that are on our payroll. They're never going to report on any of this stuff. And all of it's going to go away. You'll get a cabinet position. Hell, you might even run for president and we'll back you, but you're going to have to disappear for a while. That's what they're going to do to him. He'll go under the radar for a while. You won't hear from him, okay? Whether he resigns or whether he just runs out his term, you won't hear from him for a while. The media won't cover any of this stuff. There's going to be no court proceedings,
no.
None whatsoever. He's going to get away with the things that the left says you're not supposed to get away with if you're a man, okay, like groping a woman and sexually harassing a woman, and then they'll resurrect him later on. Why? Because he's got a charisma that they like, and he's got a brazenness that they need.
You really think so?
Yeah, they'll bring him back.
You see, I personally think he's going to run out his term and then he's done. I do. I personally think, I don't think he has what it takes. Like, he's not like Clinton, who had like 55 lives.
Right,
you know what I'm
right.
saying? Like, he just knew how to like reinvent himself. You know, he'd come out with his Bible in his hand and go to his like
biting his lip.
Yeah, then like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. I'm
sorry. And don't worry about it. You gotta love me because you remember I was the first black president, not Barack Obama. I walked through Harlem. I got off the bus and walked through Harlem, and I realized that I was home. You know who knew he was full of crap when he said that? Black people in Harlem knew he was full of crap.
But I think he's done. I could be wrong, but I think he's done. I think the Democratic Party has moved past people like Andrew Cuomo.
Do you think so?
No,
this is all conjecture.
No, but I mean, to be truthful with you, even like, I think it's more along the lines of, unless they get forced backwards, I think de Blasio is more in line with the agenda of the Democratic Party right now than Cuomo is.
I agree.
Sadly.
I agree with you on that. The thing is, I don't think de Blasio, mainly because of the cops and firemen, okay? But mainly because of the cops. He'll get the teachers, okay? That's easy to get the teachers' unions. I don't think the cops would back de Blasio. I don't think he could ever become the governor of New York without the NYPD backing. And he's been such a disgraziad on the mayoral level.
Well, he's done too.
He's going to finish out his term, go down fighting and swinging. He's trying to impose. Everybody that listens to our voice knows I work in the hospitality industry. He's going to try to impose the vaccine passport. Okay, we're going to see how that goes. They're threatening another lockdown. You hear. But it doesn't matter if they do it nationally. He's going to do it in the city. In the meantime, he doesn't even have a lot of time left in his term, but he's going to go down swinging. He's a commie that's going to leave his mark.
Well, that was a mistake. I mean, like, looking back, like, radicals like that have no business being in politics, in all honesty. They don't get anything done.
Because they're wrapped up, as you always say, in their tribe and their ideology.
Well, it's agenda-based as opposed to people-based. A politician represents people. I mean, primarily, if you look at the Democratic Party, if you ask me, and listen, we're from New Jersey. New Jersey is a blue state. I know many people who vote Democrat straight down the line, functioning people. Many people, sadly, don't care about social issues, to be truthful with you. I mean, it's a sad reality. I mean, those are the type of things that drive me. Obviously, abortion. I believe in traditional marriage. But to a lot of people, that doesn't mean anything.
Right.
Like, they may have an opinion, but it's not a driving opinion that's going to make them vote this way or that way. And listen, there's a lot of union people in New Jersey, teachers unions, Teamsters, cops, at least where I live. And they vote for the Democrats. I mean, it's always been like that. They're functional people. Do they go to church? Maybe some do.
Right.
Do they take their faith seriously? Listen, I'm not in their heart, but
we can't know.
But what I will say is the Democrats have morphed into this agenda-driven group of people. I mean, I say this all the time, and don't even take my word for it. Look at who they appoint. Look at their policies. This is not the Democratic Party of old.
Did you see recently I guess, I don't know if she's up for Secretary of the Interior, a woman who used to spike, which is a crime, by the way, who used to spike trees. I think it was back in the 80s, okay, as a protest against logging. Did you ever hear about that?
No, I never did.
If you spike a tree, you're spiking a piece of metal into a tree. When the logger comes along with the chainsaw, 2 loggers to cut down that tree, the chainsaw hits the spike.
Okay.
It ain't pretty when that spike breaks apart, or if the spike causes the chainsaw to break apart, and you literally not only can injure someone, you could kill them, okay? You kill them. That's who this Scraziad Biden put up for, I believe, Secretary of the Interior. And Rand Paul and a bunch of them said, we're going to talk to you about these. These are federal crimes. She bragged about it in a paper, a letter or a paper or something like that. Okay. like you said, they don't care. They'll do anything, okay? But when you have the media on your side that shapes culture,
Well,
guess
that's
what?
the biggest problem.
Let's pick this up on the other side of the break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and the Kennedy Profession. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. And right now, on the Crusade Channel, we're going to continue for a few minutes with our conversation on Disgraziad Cuomo, okay? Now, again, this show we like to think of as that we were talking about the Cuomo's fall from grace, okay? Not that the dude is ever in state of grace, but you understand out there at the Crusade Channel what we're trying to say, okay? But the question that we're asking, and we asked in the first segment, okay, is are they going to allow, does he have a future? Are they going to allow him to get away with it, okay? Because Unverfurth in the Federalist basically said it's politically expedient. We'll talk about this. It's politically expedient for Cuomo's resignation right now because they have to be on the side of the feminists. You're going to have all this clamor that he's got to go, okay? Like you said earlier, Biden said he's got to resign, right? But is Biden going to put any pressure on him to resign? Probably not, okay?
I doubt it.
But what Unverfurth is asking is, it was expedient for them to call for Ralph Northam. Remember Governor Northam with the black face? And he sat there on the radio show and he said, we're going to make the babies comfortable on the table while we let them die. That's what we're going to do. You know why they let out that blackface story? Because what he said in the radio interview preceded that. And it was so atrocious. Even to pro-choice people, okay, pro-abortion people, they said, how could you say that? All right. So they had to deflect from that and bring out the blackface thing, okay? But it was politically expedient to call for his resignation. But did they follow through with it? No. And they're not gonna follow through with it when it comes to Cuomo. Why? They don't want a guy to resign for the things that we say they should resign for, like sexual harassment or letting a baby die on a table or wearing blackface or anything like that, because that would show that we're right and they're wrong, and they can't have that. So what they'll do is, again, they get the media, Joe, on their side, and they start to get very quiet about these
Well, that's
things.
the problem. I mean, I'll be truthful with you. If you want to look at the problem, well, the problem is we've forgotten about God. That's no question about it. The problem, unarguable in my mind. But in terms of just from a secular perspective, if you have conservative ideas, sadly, they just don't get communicated. That's why, if you ask me, the Donald Trump lawsuit that's going on right now against big tech, I'm very interested to see where that goes, because even if he loses, what I want to see ideally that comes out of that is not necessarily that he can go back on Twitter or he can go back on Facebook, but what I would like to see is they take their protection away, because that would really, really improve the state of America, if you ask me.
I think you're spot on. More importantly, though, than Donald Trump, okay? Now, on the Crusade Channel, we're talking about a channel that cannot get taken down. That's why you should subscribe and become a Founders Pass member, okay? So Mike Church and what he's doing is combating that on that level. As far as the other social media platforms are concerned, I'm not interested in whether Donald Trump could say what he wants on Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. I'm interested in what all of us could say on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Because they know, Joe, they know. See, remember something, you have to be very shrewd. As our blessed Lord said, you have to be shrewd. You have to see and try to analyze what they're doing. Why do they want to shut down social media so much? Because they know how effective we could be.
Well, that's how Donald Trump became the president, was through Twitter. He said that out of his own mouth.
And all he did, by the way, a follow up on that, tell me if you agree. He took the Ronald Reagan model.
I was just going to say that.
Which is to go over their head. He used modern technology, Twitter, but he did the same thing. The media hated Ronald Reagan for going over their head, and the media hated Donald Trump for going over their head using Twitter. But I'm interested in, like Mike Church has the Crusade Channel, but I want Mike Church also to be on YouTube. Okay. I'm just saying, hypothetically, I want him to be out there on social media also. Okay. I want all people to be out there on social media who think the way we do, not just Catholics, but all people of goodwill who are fighting this culture war. Okay. I want Donald Trump back on there, but I want to be able to say what I want also. Now, we could say what we want on the Crusade channel because we got the King dude. Okay. But when we go on social media, there are quite frankly stories Joe and I can't cover. They'll take us down.
Yeah,
they took down our producer, Jonathan Ross, up in Canada. All right. For some things involving things we won't even mention. That's unfair because, and again, getting back to the point, why are they doing it? Because they know we make too much damn sense and we're telling way too much truth for them to handle. So they have to. I think you're right. It's going to be interesting to see how the courts
that's what I hope. That's what I hope the outcome is. While I found the Donald to be entertaining, and I think Twitter was much more entertaining when he was on it. It's very boring now, to be truthful with you. My view, I thought it was much more livelier. I mean, like him or not, he's a funny dude, man. Trump come out with some like seriously funny statements.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons they hated him, because he actually could smile, where they're just a bunch of grumpy, miserable disgraziados.
But I mean, ultimately, that needs to happen. I mean, they have to take their protections away. I think it was a big mistake from a business perspective. I think all of this woke stuff, I mean, there's a saying going around these days, go woke, go broke. And frankly, I think it's true. I think ultimately it's going to bite a lot of these corporations in the behind, in plain English, where, when it comes to dollars and cents. At the end of the day, when you go into business, you're not an activist. You're there. Obviously, you're there to work. You're obviously there to make honest money. You're there to do a good job. You're there to put in a good day's work. But frankly, listen, if I own a company, I don't care what you think about politics, religion. I don't care what you even do at home, to be honest with you. When I go to work, I just work. Obviously, I'm friendly with people. I have friends at work, but at the end of the day, I go home. I'm not there to cultivate like lifelong friendships. I mean, if something organically happens, yes, I have friends, but I'm not there to like get into debate. Like, no, I'm there to work. And if you work for me, that's what I expect of you. And frankly, I think people are too quick now to label people, to judge people. Listen, it's about work. I'll be truthful with you. I don't care if you're Jewish. I don't care if you're Muslim. I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're an atheist. And I don't care really if you're Catholic. I'm glad you're Catholic if you work with me. But you know something? We're there to do a job. And if we're working on the same team, I want you to be able to do it. And if you can do it and you basically do a good job and you're a friendly person and you get along with people, I'll be honest with you, I don't care what you think. And I think we have to get back to that.
Well, here's the thing. What I want is equal treatment in the workplace more than anything else. Now, I'm an outspoken conservative in my workplace. I work with people who have voted Democrat. I don't think I've ever voted for a Democrat in my life. Okay. Just to say, going back to when I first became politically aware and started to vote in elections, never voted Democrat. I work with a lot of people who are reasonable people. I certainly don't agree with them on anything. And I'm a bit outspoken. But in the last couple of years, I've been a lot less outspoken at work. You want to know why? They could say whatever they want. I worked with a gay guy one time when I worked in my last place, okay? And the stuff that came out of his mouth, I never said on a street corner when I was 18 years old hanging out in Newark, New Jersey. That's the type of disgustingness that would come out of his mouth. Throw in the homosexuality on top of it, okay? And I kept my mouth shut. He said some things that were anti-Catholic, anti-Christian. I kept my mouth shut, okay? But he could get away with that. Now, that was about 8 years ago, 9 years ago. But even now, he could get, even more so now, he could get away with that. But if I countered him, if I did open my mouth and said, well, what's the problem with what I believe about you and your lifestyle, okay? I would have been fired. That's the problem I have, is the double standard. Free speech is either allowed in the workplace, and anybody could say whatever they want, okay? Anything they want as far as their beliefs, if you're going to allow it. If you're not going to allow it, then everybody shuts up and does what Joe says. Punch in, be on time, punch in, do your job, take your lunch break, come back, do the rest of your job, punch out, and go home
But
and spout your stuff, your personal beliefs at the bar after work.
I'll be true with you. And the reason why I said what I said, I had a very good managing director. I'm not going to mention his name on this show. And I was in a political discussion. I got sucked into it. This was probably fairly recently, actually, with a guy I like a lot, to be honest with you. We have a very good relationship. Anyway, we were disagreeing. And it was, I don't want to say it was loud, but it was, you know, we work in cubicles. It's an open area. So, I mean, my managing director heard it and he basically pulled me aside. We had a very good relationship. He's my boss's boss. And he was just like, actually, he said it to the two of us, actually, because he was friends with this gentleman as well. And he basically said, guys, listen, this is not the place for politics in this workplace, because what happens, and what made me think of it is what you're saying, basically, no matter what happens at the end of that discussion, feelings could be hurt. Bitterness can be basically, you know, drummed up. And we're here to work.
Right.
You see, again, like if I'm running, the tone comes from the top. If I have people who work for me, I don't care what you believe at work. I want you to be a good person. I want you to be friendly. I want you to be open and easy to work with, because we have to get something done. That's the most important thing. If the job doesn't get done, it's all our asses. But I don't care. It's not the place. It's not the place to proselytize. You want to proselytize? Do it by your behavior. Be a good person. Be a person of joy. Be decent to one another. Listen, when I worked in Manhattan, I haven't been there in a year and a half. I work in my basement. I went to mass every day at noon, and everyone knew it. Where you going? I'm going to church. But at the same time, I didn't stand on my desk and recite the Gospel of John.
Mhm.
I didn't tell people how to live. Frankly, I like to think I showed them how to live by being a good person. So my point is, it's not the place. And frankly, I don't want to hear, say, a Jewish person proselytize to me. I don't want to hear, and frankly, they shouldn't have to be subject to my proselytization in the workplace. You're there to work. And why do I bring this rant up? It's a mistake that these companies went in this direction. You're there to make money. You're there to make money.
Do you see what New York City's doing? They mandate all these videos now that you have to watch. Okay. So people that work for my company, which is a nationwide company, a lot of states, they don't have to watch de Blasio's propaganda. In New York, you have to watch de Blasio's propaganda. And I'm watching this, and it's all rainbow stuff. It's and all you guys out there at the Crusade channel know exactly what I'm talking about. It's all rainbow stuff, okay? You have to watch. Don't say anything offensive. Well, what about the things that I find offensive as a Roman Catholic man? When you make a statement against the Catholic Church in any way that's offensive to me, what am I, a crybaby? Going to go run into human resources? Now you said something that offended me, and I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. I got thick skin. If you're truly a man, okay, and again, nowadays you don't even know who thinks they're truly a man, okay, grow some thick skin. Somebody says something you don't like, too bad. Or as my 82-year-old Italian mother now says, it's too bad, okay? No, who cares? If you're offended, too bad. If you're offended, stop saying offensive things about the Catholic Church, and I'll stop saying things about what I believe that you find offensive.
Well, how about this?
Right?
If someone says something that's offensive to you, you just go up to them on the side and say, listen, that I find to be personally offensive. I would appreciate it if you didn't do that. I don't do that to you. And any reasonable person, I think, would respond in kind.
I want to ask you a question. Especially nowadays, the people that are pushing this stuff. And I'm going to ask the question and shut up. All right. Are you dealing with reasonable people?
Some people are. I'll be truthful with you. I have actually done that. That's why I bring it up. I can remember this was about 20 years ago. There was a woman that would make a lot of disparaging comments indirectly about the Christian faith. And I confronted her via email. I sent her an email and I just said, listen, I'd appreciate it if you didn't do that. I didn't threaten her, but I called her on it. And I did it through email. You see, there's ways to do things. There's ways to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of them, because you document it indirectly. You'd be surprised how people will back down. Very subtly, I asked, and frankly, we're still friends. I didn't make a stink. I didn't stand on a desk. I didn't get in her face.
Joe SNL didn't say he's going to go running to human resources because the woman offended him.
And I would never do that either. But at the same time, I don't want to hear nonsense.
Right.
And shouldn't have to.
That's the key right there. You should not have to. If I am restricted in my speech, and you want to know what? If I'm working with someone who I know to be gay, okay, well, I have enough sense to maybe not have a conversation with them unless perhaps they ask. And I have been asked. I have been asked, okay, with one of my gay coworkers one time about what the Catholic Church teaches. I was loving and compassionate, but truthful. And I told him, because he came up to me and basically, just to digress for a second, tell a quick story, on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. He came up to me. He was an Hispanic younger guy, all right, from Southern California. And I was working with him in New York. And he basically came up to me and says, my aunts and my mom, they're telling me I'm going to hell. Okay. Now he grew up Catholic. Okay. And he came up to me and he had respect for me. And he said, what is the actual teaching on that? And I explained it to him in a loving, compassionate way about sin in general. All right. And how we're supposed to stay close to Christ, and that in that lifestyle is sinful. But I said it in a loving way. He didn't go running to human resources. He didn't go scurrying off and telling teacher that Joe P said so. Joe, nowadays you got to watch. Sometimes if they listen, you're dealing with now not the reasonable people that you're talking about. Sometimes you're dealing with very vicious, unreasonable people. They'll try to trap you. They'll try to make a human resources case out of you. We're living in cancel culture, so you can't tell me, Joe, that you don't think that they're capable. No,
I get it. I mean, I had somebody, to be truthful with you, I can get very vocal on social media periodically. I had somebody take a picture of what I put on social media and basically with my name on it.
Oh, yeah.
And posted it.
That was the threat?
Well, yeah. Well, basically to try to get me in trouble.
Right.
But I mean, which is very sad. I mean, again, that's just not my cup of tea, to be truthful with you.
Right.
But listen, ultimately, the workplace is the workplace. You're there to do a job. I have a friend that's a vice principal in a public school in an urban area in Harrison.
Okay.
And he told me straight out, he tells his teachers, listen, I am not interested. And by the way, he's a deacon in the Catholic Church. He's a Catholic. He's like, teach your subject. He's like, that's agenda based. That's the approach. And all of this stuff. I mean, I know we've digressed. We were talking about Cuomo, but it's a good conversation. The platforms, corporate America, if you ask me, you're not there to get on a soapbox. You're there to work. And frankly, if I was running a large department and I started to see that, I'd call a meeting and I would say that. They say that in the military. People who are in the military, they basically say the first day of boot camp, I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you're black. I don't care if you're a Christian. I don't care if you're Jewish. You're all equally miserable in my eyes.
Right.
You're in boot camp. Well, guess what? It's the same kind of thing in a job.
That's like the drill sergeant from Full Metal Jacket. He says, to me, you are all equally worthless.
Well, that's it. But I'll be truthful with you. If I'm doing a job, obviously a couple things. If I'm looking to hire somebody, one, can you do it? But also two, do you know how to work with people? Meaning, like, if most things are done in a team effort. If you're a person that can do those two things, I got news for you. I don't care if you're Catholic. I want you to be Catholic because, frankly, if you ask me, I think it's the best way to live on earth, and it's the key to going into heaven. Why? Because Jesus Christ said it. He said it. He founded one church, the Catholic Church. It's the way, the truth, and the life. And I want you to be a Catholic because I want you to be happy. I want you to go to heaven. However, I'm not here to preach at work. I'm here to do a job.
Right.
So guess what? If you're whatever you are, you're friendly, you work well with other people, you can get the job done, I'm not hanging out with you after work. At the end of the day, I'm going to say, hey, Bill, have a good day.
I will.
Goodbye, Joe.
I will say,
see you tomorrow.
Joe,
and that's the end of it.
And listen, I think that's the best way to go about it. The government, I'm going to tell you, this is where the government needs to step in. National Labor Relations Board. Okay. In other words, whoever it might be, you have to step in. And you've always, for years, we've heard, well, employers can't do that and employers can't do that. Well, okay. But now employers are going to require speech codes or impose speech codes on us, or have me watch a video that makes me puke, quite frankly, because I don't agree with any of it. I don't need de Blasio or the woke corporations to teach me the teachings of Jesus Christ, which is to love God and love my neighbor. I know how to love my neighbor. And just because loving your neighbor does not mean you accept everything your neighbor does. Okay? If I have a family member who's on drugs, I don't say, oh, that's wonderful, they're hooked on heroin. No, I don't say that. I say, you got to get off heroin and I'm here to help. Anybody who's leading a destructive lifestyle. Okay? But here, that's the thing. Like, if government needs to step in and level this playing field, and I just want to make one other point, Joe, because I know we got to talk about the other disgraziat in California, unfortunately, Gavin Newsome, or maybe fortunately. We'll see how that story goes. But Joe, I'll be honest with you. Somebody walks into my office, and I'm the employment manager, and I'm the one responsible for recruiting and things like that. If you come in, I personally don't care who you are and where you're from. You start spouting that woke nonsense in the interview, I'll just look at you and say, wow, great. All right, good. This, that, the other thing. And you know what's going to happen to their resume soon as they walk out the door? In the shredder. I don't need it. I can discriminate against that. I can. You're not bringing that woke nonsense into my workplace. Not having it. And that's where we got to get to. That's where we got to get to.
I think, in all honesty, you're entitled. I respect freedom because I'm an American. You are entitled to believe and say what you want. To be truthful with you, it's just not for the workplace. You see, that's where I draw. Like, I just don't want to hear it at work. Just like you probably don't want me to tell you that you should go to mass.
Right.
I think this is the sad part about social media. There's great things about social media. You learn a lot of things. You can connect with people that you wouldn't usually see. Like, I have friends all over the country, friends that I went to college with, who lives in California, who lives here, who lives there. You get you tie into their life.
Right.
The bad thing about it is everyone has a megaphone. And I think almost it bleeds into normal life.
Mm-hmm.
Life doesn't work that way. But I believe you're free to express your view. Even if I don't agree with it, you should be able to say it. Why can't I say it?
Because the way they're now, because again, Joe, what you're talking about is an argument to a reasonable person. When you're dealing with rabid Marxists, they know your argument, Joe. They're smart people. They know your argument. They know the reasonable argument is the one you're making right now. What they do is they try to get all their buddies at the Critical Legal Studies Department in Harvard and all the Ivy League law schools to come up with some legal justification to shut you down because they know they don't have one, not under the First Amendment of the Constitution anyway. So what do? And Joe, not for nothing, way before the Frontline with Joe and Joe, way before we were on the Crusade channel, I used to say this. That's how this was 20 years ago. I remember that's how they're going to get away with it. They're going to come up with this thing called hate speech. And they're going to argue to courts that if a person holds a certain view, now hear me on that. If you hold a certain view, marriage is between one man and one woman, that's doing violence to somebody. If you say a man can't be a woman biologically, that's doing violence to them. It's hate speech. Therefore, they have their justification. And of course, they'll get their ACLU-friendly liberal judges to go along with them to pass that kind of stuff. See, that's the problem, Joe.
I know that's the angle they can go. But I mean, as a Catholic, my angle, first of all, I don't proselytize at work. I proselytize by the way I treat people, frankly, and by my joy. I like to think people who may be listening, I'm a happy person.
Mm-hmm.
I have fun at work. I do. I laugh. I talk to everybody. I'm friends with everybody, frankly. But if someone pulled that on me, this is my thing. I'm Catholic. It's part of my belief system. I'm not telling you in this place of employment how to live your life. Don't tell me. It's part of my belief system, and it is part of the First Amendment. And I'll be truthful with you. This is where I think a lot of this woke stuff is just talk. Ultimately, if it goes to the mat, I'll be truthful with you. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think so. You get the right lawyer, you win. You win. I'm telling you.
I think you get the right judge. I agree with you, but I think the judges, I think that was, and we talked about it a lot. We'll pick this up on the other side of the break because we got to talk about Governor Newsome. That's why the judges are so important. That's one of the central reasons they tried to take down Trump. And we could have that conversation about the judges. But remember, founders, past member to the Crusade channel. Just to give you a little bit of a preview of new releases. You have Si Qua Virtus, episode 5, The Culture War with our friend John Horvat. All right. You get that at the Crusade channel. The Kennedy Profession, Kennedy Hall, A Tale of Two Republicans, DeSantis versus Rubio. This is all top-notch stuff. This is stuff we have to be listening to. This is stuff we have to be feeding our brain with, not the least of which is the Frontline with Joe and Joe. So you're listening to the Crusade Channel. Your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession from sunup to sundown. The Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So we went on a little bit of a tangent, but again, that's what us Italian guys do. You know, we start talking about one thing, and then we're 10 steps ahead in about a half hour. But a great conversation, a lot of important points there, things for us to think about, talk about. Again, we're talking about free speech. Let's pivot. Wait, Joe. Let's circle back.
Nice.
Okay, let's circle back to disgraziad governors. Okay, so you got one governor that at least right now is in trouble in New York. We'll see how that plays out. Okay, but politically speaking, more along the lines of, let's say, what the people are actually saying and what they're probably about to do. Gavin Newsom's in a whole lot of trouble too. Joe Resinello wants to kick off that conversation.
Well, Tristan Justice at the Federalist tells us that Newsome is down double digits in the recall election, according to a survey of 1,100 Californians conducted August 2nd to the 4th. Basically, what is it? I think half are saying that Cuomo,
more than half.
They're saying that Newsome, not Cuomo, is going to get sacked.
Joe, Newsome, Cuomo. Okay, go ahead.
Basically, the survey is raising an alarm for the Newsome team with 40 days to go until the recall day, which is September 14th, when voters will decide yes or no. Basically, it's just that simple, black or white, whether the governor should remain in office or be removed. Driven by unrelenting lockdowns and frustration over the state's inconsistent power grid, Newsome is the second governor to face a recall effort on the ballot in state history after voters ousted Democrat Gray Davis in 2003, who was replaced by Arnold himself.
Arnold said, you have to vote for me. You have to get Gray Davis out of office because I have to be in Sacramento because I'm going to be the best terminating governor you ever had. Yeah! that's and you know what? I just to digress for a second, I so was happy because I always thought Arnold was conservative, like he was conservative, all right? And turned out he wasn't. All right, he played that California game. Again, you become governor of California, something overtakes you. You don't overtake it. That is a corrupt state. And there's a lot of people, a lot of stuff out there that have talked about the corruption in California, especially when it comes to how people get elected. But yeah, Arnold took over for Gray Davis, and he was a failure. Arnold was a failure, okay, on top of it. But Newsom's in trouble. Even in California, okay, Newsom's in trouble. Why? Because of what Joe says all the time at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Overreach. You overplayed your hand. Then on top of it, Joe Resinello, again, this is why social media is important and why they have to allow us to have free speech. Not allow us, we demand it. We ought to demand it and have the government do something about it. Newsome goes to a 5-star Michelin star restaurant with a dozen of his friends. Somebody takes a picture, puts it on social media because dude's not wearing a mask. And people know that, Joe Resinello. They see his overreaches, his heavy-handedness. This dude could have taught Joseph Stalin a few lessons, okay? And then they see the hypocrisy. They see the hypocrisy. And you know what? You throw that in with, like they said in the article, Tristan Justice said about power grids and practical things like energy, you know, like heating your home or air conditioning, okay? And what you get, it spells disaster. Even in a corrupt state like California, it couldn't happen to a worse disgraziad. We hope that they give him the boot.
The saddest part about it is California, just from an aesthetic perspective, is utterly beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I traveled for 15 years as an auditor all over this country. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I've seen a lot of California, not just the cities. I've driven the coast. I've driven into the interior. California is utterly beautiful. I'm talking about the countryside. I'm talking about the ocean. I'm talking about, I mean, I could recall getting out, being in like Palo Alto, working, actually even working in on Wilshire Boulevard, getting out and walking to work. Nobody walks in California. I did because I'm like a New Jersey, New York guy. We walk everywhere. Just the smell of like flowers in front of people's houses. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. It is so sad what has happened to that state. Sad.
Well, what's happened?
Terrible.
Well, Joe Rossinello, what's happened? What have we spoken about before? Now you don't have the smell of flowers on Wilshire Boulevard.
You have human feces.
You have human feces.
You know,
and guess what? You know what? Even in a corrupt state, the people, I mean, look at all the people that are leaving California. Now, unfortunately, they're bringing the politics with them to states that don't want their politics. I mean, to me, it's like the ultimate, I mean, what is it? What do they call it in psychology? Cognitive dissonance or something along those lines. You're leaving California because you don't like the politics that you voted for. And then you want to bring your politics to another state so that you can make that state, like Texas, look like California. You got to grow up, man. You have to sometimes in life question your assumptions, particularly on politics.
Well,
I have, Joe has. In other words, where you say, well, I don't want to be an ideologue.
well, people, but Joe, people that, I mean, even look at relationships. It's basically rinse and repeat. I mean, people who get divorced many times get divorced again. Because sadly, they bring the same nonsense that was in their first marriage to the second marriage.
Right.
It's the same thing with like, I mean, people don't reflect. It's never them. It's always the other person. I mean, that's just the human aspect of our broken nature. I mean, that's why, frankly, we need God. We're all broken. God came because he's Savior. He's Savior. He gives us sight. I just had a conversation with a friend of mine from high school on social media about that very subject. I know people who make minimum wage through the church, people I know who go to church. They're not big earners. Frankly, they have more common sense than some people who are highly educated because their eyes are open. I mean, I just heard recently you talk about California. The governor of Idaho, which a lot of people from California are moving to Idaho, called the state a dumpster fire. I mean, after a while, when you try something, whether it's in politics or it's in life, and it fails consistently over and over and over and over and over again, you have no success whatsoever. Don't you want to eventually reassess? Do you
Sane people do.
No, but well, successful people do. You see, successful people are introspective. They think about things. They're also open to saying, I was wrong. That's not right. Let's correct this.
Mm-hmm.
This can be done better.
Right.
Sadly, there's a schizophrenia in politics that's sad, and I see it consistently. I see it on both sides of the aisle. They can't see past their own tribe. They can't see past their own ideas. They can't say that, you know, something, maybe I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong there. You know, let me think about what you're saying.
Very difficult.
It's gone.
Joe,
it's all gone.
Introspection, challenging your beliefs, okay? Looking in the mirror and saying, you know, a famous story from a few years ago. Back in the day, I used to be an actor. And when you were an actor in the 80s and 90s, particularly in the 90s, that's all you wanted to do was be in a David Mamet play. You wanted to be in American Buffalo or Glengarry Glen Ross. I really liked David Mamet. And then he made movies like he wrote The Untouchables. And he wrote and directed other movies. David Mamet was a darling of the left. A darling of the left. I'm using him as an example, but this happened with a number of people. As an actor, Ron Silver, he went through the same thing before he died. He tragically died of cancer. He had a political conversion. David Mamet, later on in life, okay, after a successful career, after being a darling of the left, they loved him to death, okay? He said he had a political conversion. And he said flat out, I had to ask myself, do I really believe this stuff? That is not easy to do. It's not easy to do, okay? To look in the mirror and say, I've been voting Democrat my whole life. I consider myself a liberal, even a leftist, okay? And do I really believe it? And the answer he came up with was no. No, I don't really believe this stuff. And he was subsequently then vilified by the tolerant people, the so-called open to ideas people on the left. Ron Silver went through I hated Ron Silver at one point. He was a vicious, vicious leftist. He would say things about Republicans that people like meatheads say now. You know what I mean? Ron Silver, God rest his soul, before he got cancer, he had a political conversion. The same thing, Joe. But you know what that requires?
Humility.
Humility. Saying to yourself, I don't know everything. I've changed many of my softened many of my political positions because of my faith in Jesus Christ and the teachings of the Catholic Church. I consider myself, I think truthfully, no longer an ideologue. When I was a kid, I thought more ideologically. Well, I can't believe that because then I'll be a communist. You know, it's a bad way to think. But I've had to go through that to a degree to say, well, I now question my position, let's say, on just laissez-faire capitalism. I don't think it's a good idea. No, we should take care of the environment, not the way the wackos tell us we should, but we need to be good stewards of the earth, okay? So there is a room for some government intervention from time to time. These are things when you start to think and use your brain and your God-given reason and stop thinking ideologically, okay? You start to either soften and or change some positions. That's what people like David Mamet did. That's what people like Ron Silver did. They were vilified for it. Okay. Ron Silver went to his grave with them calling him the worst names in the world. Okay. And the thing is, a guy like Newsome, getting back to him, he's in trouble because people are saying, is this working? Joe, they're maybe being a bit introspective. They say, well, obviously people defecating in the street and the governor of Idaho called us a dumpster fire. Maybe we are. And maybe we ought to do something about it.
Dude, do you ever see a picture of the governor of Idaho?
No, I haven't.
Bro, the dude's got like a beard. Like, I kid you not.
So he really is from Idaho.
The cat's got like one of those, like, you know, who's that, like, one rap producer? He does like a lot. I can't think. He's pretty eccentric. He's got a beard down to the middle of his chest.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but
I can't believe I can't think of his name. Anyway, he looks like a character. And he's like, when he threw out the dumpster fire deal, I laughed to myself because the guy looked like he was sleeping next to a dumpster with the beard, crazy ass beard. But the point is, again, we have to step back from that. I think as a people, I mean, I like to look at, I don't even consider myself a Republican, frankly. I look at ideas.
I'm with you on that.
I look at ideas. You know, I'll have a conversation with anybody, frankly. The problem is we're labeling people. We're labeling people. We have to stop it. You know, like, people, listen, again, we're Catholic, right? We're Catholic. Under it all, God created everybody. God also calls us to love everybody. We have to talk to people. There has to be conversation. Do you know what I'm saying?
But you're good. But the thing is, you're good at that because you have a heart that really believes what you just said. And you are a person of goodwill. Okay. You can talk to people because you're not an insane ideologue. Okay. When you're dealing with insane ideologues like Gavin Newsom, the problem is, Joe, not your willingness to speak to them. They're not willing to sit down across the table and have their ideas challenged. And let me tell you something. If you truly are a person in this world who is seeking truth, not a relative truth, truth with a capital T, you need to be able to have a conversation with someone who's going to challenge you, or else you're never going to grow. You're never, ever, you're going to stay stuck in your little box that you put yourself in. Usually nowadays it's a political box. And then you're just going to try to game the system to get as much power as you can, which is what a guy like Newsome and a guy like Cuomo does, until people who have eyes to see get fed up and say, I don't like this anymore. I like that beautiful country that Joe Resinello was talking about. I like the Pacific Coast Highway. I like the ocean. I like the mountains. I like these things. I like San Francisco Bay. I like Napa Valley. And if somebody's crapping in the middle of a vineyard, I want them arrested and taken out. I don't want to understand them. I want them arrested and taken out. Same as the streets of San Francisco. And I think people may be starting to come to that point. And Larry Elder, Joe, I don't know if you want to talk about him. Don't count him out.
No, I know. I mean,
I think he'd be better than Arnold.
I would agree. But I think the reason we had a really good interview with Josh Mitchell, he's a professor at Georgetown. You could look it up on our social media on Veritas Catholic Network.
He's super duper smart.
Oh, absolutely. And a great guy. Super, super person. And he talked about, basically, he wrote a book about political tribalism and how it's basically tearing the country apart. It's because it's become people's identity. You see, my identity is I'm a Catholic. I'm a Catholic. I'm a child of God. And frankly, I like to think I treat other people that way, not as a Catholic, but a child of God, even if we disagree. I don't wish you harm. I don't hate you. And frankly, that's the way you should look at me. It's not the case, though. You know, I have seen this even in my own family. The tolerant people are the most intolerant. Robert George actually just posted this. I follow him on social media. He talked about how considerably, like the percentage is considerably higher on the left with regard to people writing people off. I don't write anybody off. Christ didn't write anybody off. If he wrote people off, he would have wrote me off many years ago. Believe it, but he didn't. You see, that's got to stop. That's got to stop. You see, it's not a Christian idea to write people off.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't write off Zacchaeus. He didn't write off the woman at the well. He didn't write off Peter. He didn't write people off. You see, that's what's part of the problem in the dialogue in America. There is none. Everyone's got into their camp. You know, listen, I don't have to agree with you. There used to be a saying, let's agree to disagree. There are people in my family that have completely different views than I. Believe it, extremely different. I could just say we could agree to disagree. Listen, how about this? Let's pray for one another. How does that sound?
Well, I would ask you then, though, but how do you say that to the godless?
Well, how's this sound? Then don't say it. Pray for them anyway.
No, we'll pray for them.
No, but I mean, but like, this is where I just read something. I was, what's it called? In ShopRite the other day. And you know how you have those magazines, like as you're going out. And it says, like, you know, the big story on all of them as I'm waiting to, you know, pay for my food, is Jennifer Aniston wrote people off who didn't take the vaccine. I don't write anyone off. I'll be honest with you. I don't write anyone off ever. I mean, you know, think about your life. People, think about your journey of your life. Maybe you've arrived at a place now that is much better than it was many years ago. Did people write you off, as in your mother, your father? I think about my own life, how my parents, how bad I used to behave. They didn't write me off. Never. We have to, as people, get back to that. Frankly, that's a Catholic idea, guys. You know what I'm saying? We can't be writing people off. At the minimum, if you can't be in the same room with somebody, you better be praying for them. You better be praying for them. And frankly, you don't have to like everybody, but God says you got to love them. And I don't see a lot of it going on, Joe.
I think what you're saying is so very important, because the difference between the tolerant Jennifer Aniston, like I'm always reminded, to me, it's the most popular parable of Jesus, because it's one that speaks to nearly everybody, the prodigal son. Okay. But the father didn't write the son off. The father let the son go on his journey. Okay. Son could have died there. He could have died in that faraway place. And the father took that chance. Okay. But the difference is, he didn't write the son off. But when the son came to his senses, the father was there on the road looking for him on his way back, and met him halfway there. All right. And brought him back. Okay. So I'm with you on that. Okay. But sometimes what you got to do is, the people that, Joe, that they hate our guts, they call us haters, but they're really the haters. I'm sorry. Okay. Let them stew in their misery and their bad ideas. Let them experience it for themselves. Maybe they come to enlightenment. Maybe they don't. And they journey back to a place of truth, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And we'll be there with open arms, because we don't judge them the way they judge us. They'd write us off, as Jennifer Aniston says. I write off anybody who's not getting a vaccine, let's say, in her case, okay? They'll write off anybody who, let's say, doesn't agree with their view of marriage, okay, because we believe in real marriage, okay? But the difference between us and them is we're there to welcome them back. We're there to welcome them back in open arms, no grudges, no anything. Put rings on their fingers and sandals on their feet and kill the fatted calf. We're going to have a party, okay, because they've come to the truth, all right? But that's the difference between us and them. I believe this. Right now in America, they seek our destruction, where we simply seek for them to start to realize that they're A, living bad lives, and B, they have some really bad ideas.
But I also think from a Catholic perspective, God wastes nothing. I think a lot of these deep disagreements are there for us to really reflect on our own love for each other. I mean, not to sound sentimental, but to be truthful with you, people who, especially in your own family, I mean, there are families that are getting torn apart. I could speak for my own high school. Someone recently in the chat room.
Hold that thought for a break. Hold that thought for a break. I want you to tell that story, but hold that thought for a break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, Kennedy Profession with Kennedy Hall. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll come back in a few minutes. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. Way in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air, always online at crusadechannel.com. Joe Resinello was talking in the last segment about love. Joe, I'm going to hand it back to you.
I could just speak for my own high school. Someone in the chat room who I just recognized, I won't mention her name, that I was in homeroom with for 4 years. She now relocated out of Jersey into Florida. And I could remember at our 30th reunion, they basically, we had a pretty tight class. And during the elections, it just exploded on social media. And everybody just took sides and frankly stopped talking to one another. And I think that's sad. I could seriously disagree with many of these people, but I don't hate them. And I got news for you. Even if we disagree, if you needed my help, I'll help you. I'm going to be honest with you. You knock on my door, I'm helping you, because that's the right thing to do. That's what a follower of Christ does. You see, we're not going to win people over by hating people. I don't have to agree with you, but ultimately, you see, also getting, we could redirect the conversation. That's what true ecumenicalism is. It's you agree what you believe, I believe what I believe. I'm not going to bend or try to convince you because I can't. And you shouldn't do the same, but let's be friends. I have friends that are Jewish, very good friends that I've worked with for many, many years. We don't agree with the direction our life is going because they don't believe in Christ and I do. It doesn't get any more,
that's pretty
opposite.
Right.
However, I'm their friend.
Do you want to hear an interesting story? I found it interesting. I heard a priest give this homily. It's a couple of years ago. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I just want to give an example of how a hateful, dark heart can turn by that example that Joe's talking about. And I didn't know this character. Usually when you talk about Nazis, you know all the characters. I didn't know this particular one. The priest was given the homily, and he was talking. His name was Rudolf Haas, not Rudolf Hess, Rudolf Haas. And he was one of the commandants of one of the concentration camps. I don't remember which one. I'm not sure if it was Auschwitz. Probably, by what I heard, personally responsible for the deaths of about 600,000 Jews.
Oh my goodness.
He killed a lot of people in that camp. Now, just fast forward, because I'm trying to show you or give an example of something I heard from a good priest that illustrates what Joe was talking about. When the war ended and the camps were liberated, obviously he was taken prisoner, okay? And the prison guards, all right, were the Polish who were being the Polish people who were being oppressed and really brutalized by the Nazis while the Nazis were running these concentration camps in Poland, okay? He fully expected that these Poles were going to treat him horribly, okay? Treat him like dirt or whatever. They treated him with love and maybe not, I don't want to go so far as to say respect. They treated him with compassion, pity, with love. They fed him, okay? They didn't hurt him. They didn't do anything like that to him. That man, that Rudolf Haas, before he was executed, he called for a Catholic priest. He called for a Catholic priest because he said, I need to confess my sins. He was moved to repentance by the example. Those people, had they treated him the way he treated them for, let's say, the 3 or 4 years that the Nazis were in Poland, okay, let's say running the concentration camps, he might not have asked for repentance. He might not have changed his heart at the end of his life. He might have gotten the same treatment that he gave them. He did not. What he got and what he recognized was that what he did was wrong. And it was by the example of these Catholics, because Poles are Catholics, showing him love rather than hatred. And it turned a black, murderous heart into a heart soft enough to ask for repentance. What happened to his soul after he was executed? Only God knows. But that man confessed his sins before he died. That's the power of not doing or doing what Joe said. Don't act like them. We could speak out against them, and that's what we do at the front line with Joe and Joe. We speak out against bad ideas. We don't hate anybody. Nobody. And that's the example that we have to give to other people. Hatred is only, Bishop Barron said it one time, and he goes, hatred is just going to feed on itself. It just feeds on itself. Somebody punches you in the face, you punch them in the face. It's never going to stop until somebody, as Jesus said, turns the other cheek.
Well, that's the power of Christianity, and that's the power of the saints. And that's why we, to be honest with you, we practice our faith. That's why we pray. That's why we receive, forgiveness in the sacrament of reconciliation. Often that's why we go and receive the Eucharist. You see, that's the answer. Because a lot of the things that Joe has just talked about, you see, that's not natural. You see, I can tell you in my own walk with Christ, which has gone on for quite some time, there are so many decisions that I have made in my life since I decided to follow Jesus, I would never have made. They go against logic. They go against making money. They go against many things. They go against my own desires. You see, we have to go against these darkening times. It's easy to fall into them. I do a lot of, I don't participate that often on Twitter, but I do look at it. I'm not going to say I don't. And the hatred that spews from social media. Now, I've done it. I'm not going to say I don't. I try not to. I'm trying to get better. Know why? Because I have friends on social media that don't think that the way I do. Now, does that mean that I compromise my beliefs? Absolutely. But how am I communicating them? I'm starting to ask myself that a lot more.
You meant absolutely not. You don't compromise.
No, I'm not. But how am I communicating my belief?
Sure.
It's important. It may be more important than what you're saying. You see, here's the thing. It's not about winning an argument. It's about speaking the truth that guides people to the truth, which is Christ. This is not a debate. This is not like we're not in a court of law where there's a winner and a loser. The idea is you want to make that person a winner and point them to the truth. And I got news for you. If we don't do it in a manner that shows that we care for that person or love them, we're not going to do it.
I agree.
And it's all about ego, and it's not about God.
Right. The only time I think, along the lines of what you're saying, the only time I think it's important to win an argument, in a legit debate, not the nonsense you see on cable news shows, that's not debate, is if there's an audience that you're debating in front of. Classic kind of debate.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
All right.
And then you want to make good points and everything else. You are in a fight, let's say, against the other person to win over others and make a reasonable, better argument to the people watching. Joe's exactly right. So outside of that, where you're trying to reach other people, when you're dealing one-on-one, I've known this from my life and I've had to change. Getting angry, trying to score points, trying to say, aha, I got you. Okay. That gets you nowhere. It just, even if you're right, even if you're 1000% right, that person's not going to change their heart. They're not. In other words, you really do have to understand what you're trying to convey. The truth of the Catholic faith is what we're conveying, okay? And really know how to do it. Winning the argument in a one-on-one basis, that's not the goal. The goal is to plant seeds in the person's mind so they start thinking about what it is that you're offering, okay? Because I've lost, I would say I lost, maybe I have lost a couple friends over it, but I've really cheesed off a lot of people, and I had to self-reflect to say, you know what? Even though I know that I was right, I should not have done that.
Well, it's more of my approach. Like I, again, I have to think of how I'm saying things, and also sometimes to be merciful. Be merciful. Listen, we have to be people of the Beatitudes. That's what Christ said, right? Christ said the way to get into heaven, think about the Beatitudes. That's I'm not like a lot of those Beatitudes. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not very meek many times. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm not trying to pretend like I'm some hard ass, but I'm not. Not in my house or in my views. I have known people. I could think of one gentleman, Rich Williams. He wasn't even a Catholic. He was one of the best Christian examples I have ever witnessed in my entire life. There was something about him. He was almost like what's the guy, Gregory Peck in To Kill a Mockingbird.
Atticus
He had
Finch.
that way about him. Rich went to the University of Pennsylvania. He was my friend's dad. I grew up with his son. He went to the University of Pennsylvania, and he was an all-American goalie. He was a good-looking man, tall, stately, and he taught English as a second language in Paterson, New Jersey. He's a guy that could have been a banker and made tons and tons of money. He had the mind of an engineer. He was a good-looking man. He had a good presence, and he was just gentle. And you know what he did? He became a Christian in college. He was never a Catholic. He was a Christian, self-professed Christian, smart guy. He went to Iceland with his family because he said at the time that it had the smallest percentage of Christians, and him and his wife lived there for a decade. My friend Rich was born in Iceland, and I got to know his dad. And I remember when I was a kid, I hurt my leg. I had an operation on my leg. His dad came to visit me because he knew that Rich was my student, and he basically came to the house. He was just a nice man, but he had that meekness, not weakness. He was gentle.
Well, that's always the mistake that people make, meekness and weakness.
But to be honest with you, that is a virtue.
Right.
I don't have that.
Right.
I wish I did. My father had that. My father was like that to a degree. You see, this is how we have to, if we want to change the world and change society, I got news for you. And this is the truth. And listen, I believe it. I am fairly well read on the Catholic faith. I have taught it for many years in many different capacities. RCIA, I've taught it in pre-Cana. I've read many books. I'm not tooting my own horn, but I know a thing or two about the Catholic faith. You're never going to argue anyone into the door. You're simply not. You have to be ready for the answer when that opportunity comes up. What we have to do to win that side over is we have to love them into the door. We have to be joyful. People have to see our life, and that is only done through animation, through the sacraments, prayer, and fasting.
There you go. That's a great way to end that segment. Wait, Joe, I gotta give one. It's like our boy Tom Gugliotta says, "Do all things with love." St. Paul. That's right. That's right. And again, that doesn't mean we don't get angry. That doesn't mean that there are not a lot of things to get angry about. But at the end of the day, when you're dealing with somebody one-on-one and you're explaining the truth, the real truth, okay, then you have to, you have to do it with love. Do all things with love. So you're listening to us on the Crusade Channel, always on air and always online at thecrusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. So where are we headed next, Joe?
Well, this is an interesting story. We're going to talk a little bit about the University of Vermont. This is coming from LifeSite News. Joe Biden's Department of Justice has dropped the case that was initiated by Trump, which held that the University of Vermont's medical center had broken federal law by forcing a nurse to help commit an abortion against her will. This is a disturbing story, if you ask me, because it goes against everything we just talked about, respecting someone else's beliefs. It also, if you ask me, goes against what it means to be an American. We're not here to coerce people. Christ does not even coerce people. We propose, we don't impose. Why? Because you can't force people to love. You can't force people to love. It doesn't work. Here's the story. In 2018, the University of Vermont Medical Center had assigned a nurse to an abortion despite knowing that she had been on a list of conscience objectors for many years. She had been told that she was going to help a patient who had suffered a miscarriage. And when she discovered that she was actually going to be participating in an elective abortion, was pressured to go through with aiding the procedure despite the presence of others who could have taken her place. Now, let's talk about this right now. Why would you do that to somebody? Like, why would you do that to someone? I'll just use an example of, say, Catholic and Jewish person working in the same place. If I know that you are an Orthodox Jew and I work with an Orthodox Jewish man, he's a lawyer, his office is down the hall from where I sit. We talk all the time. In fact, he's one of the most happy people on the floor. He has 4 daughters. I've met one of his daughter. She goes to University of Columbia. He's such a joyful man, and he is a light on the floor. And we're friends and have been for many, many, many years. But if I know he's a practicing Jew, which I know he is, would I tell him that I have a ham sandwich and force him to eat it? Why would I do that? Why would I do that? I would say that that's mean. I would say that that's wrong. It's not respectful. So why would you do this to somebody? It's hateful. It's straight up and down hateful.
They wanted her to participate in an abortion.
Correct. And that is where, again, I say to myself, geez, people, where have we come? Can we respect each other?
It's stories like this, Joe Resinello, that really, we spoke in the last segment about love. And we're saying, these are the stories that arouse the hatred in my heart and that I don't want. I don't want that in my heart. I want to take one of the doctors that lied to this woman. And I'm being honest. When I feel like this, I want to smash his face against the wall. If I knew somebody was going to give a Jewish man like Joe saying a ham sandwich, I probably would punch him in the face. And I know how that sounds. I know I'm not supposed to. I probably would punch them in the face. I'm not a Jew and I don't agree with Judaism. Okay? I don't. I like Joe said, how hateful is that though? How disrespectful is that though? I remember being at work a lot of times, they put out family meal and I knew that they forgot that. I work with a lot of guys from Africa. A lot of guys are Muslim. All right. I know who they are. All right. And again, I'm friends with them, right? Hardworking people, immigrants from Africa. And I tell them, oh, dude, don't have that. And they're like, why? Well, there's pork in there. All right. And then I have to tell the chef, there's pork. These guys are Muslim. Now, he wasn't doing anything malicious, but it's a matter of being respectful. Okay. They doing this to this woman, because now you're talking about abortion. You're not talking about a ham sandwich. Okay. Forcing her, or first of all, lying to her. That's the nefarious part more than anything. We'll get into their policy in a second. But the fact that they know that she would say, no, I'm not doing that. They lie to her and tell her that she's going to be handling a woman who has already miscarried. And then she finds out she's participating in an elective abortion. Is that a joke? I'd like to take that doctor. I'd like to wring his neck for what he did to that woman.
Well, what should have taken
place. And the lawsuit.
You see, that's what should have taken place, and it did. And the bad part about this, well, it's actually worse than bad, is they dropped it. You see, this is the type of stuff, frankly, it's on LifeSite News. Why isn't this on ABC News?
Because Biden's a faithful Catholic. That's what Jen Psaki told us.
Why isn't, you see, this is the type of stuff this is why the news, in many respects, if not every respect, is the enemy of the American people. This is not an American idea. It's not, even if you believe in abortion, you should respect a person who doesn't. Obviously, that's not the way it goes. I know I'm not talking pie in the sky. Trust me, my eyes are wide open. Believe me, I have been around the block and I have a very good understanding of human nature. But what I'm saying is, this is not an American idea. And then, to make matters even worse, they don't pursue it. Now, during the course
tell everybody who dropped it.
Becerra, who frankly has no business being in that role. We all know that. Again, this is moderate Joe Biden. Everybody who says, oh, he's going to be a centrist. No. Javier Becerra is nothing but a radical.
He's hardcore.
Radical. And this is a dangerous idea.
He's had the nerve to say to senators, well, I didn't persecute any nuns. What are you, smoking crack? You think we're all, see, bothers me about a guy like Becerra. You think we're all stupid? He says, oh, I never sued any nuns. Oh, no, but your office did. The state of California did. But you were responsible for it. You're talking to senators and us, by extension, like we're all stupid. That's what I dislike about a guy like Becerra. And then in a case like this, they're so open-minded. Well, why aren't you open-minded to that woman who does not want to kill another woman's baby? What's wrong with that? It's got nothing to do with health care. She was having an elective abortion. Abortion's got nothing to do with health care. What's the problem, Javier? What's the problem? Because he's a hardcore radical leftist. And they want to just like the Jews in the Old Testament were forced to eat the pork and they got killed because they wouldn't. All right. It's the same impulse, Joe Resinello. I'm going to make you do it because I can. That's what it is. I'm going to make you do it because I can. That's the message here from Biden and Becerra.
Well, I also think, underlying it all, just knowing human nature and, basically living in the world. I mean, again, I'm not living on a hill. I'm in the world. I mean, I work in corporate America. I live in a community I live in the most densely populated state in America. I work and play with all types of people. People who basically know deep down that something is wrong sometimes want to push another person to do that as well. They say misery loves company. It's like when you're a kid, people will be like, you do something wrong and you'll tease somebody who doesn't want to do it.
Because you want them to get in trouble too.
Right. I mean, that's on a much more elementary level, but it's kind of the same behavior. I heard this recently from, what's his face? We just interviewed him. The dude from Erie, PA, Justin. He does You're Amazing. That guy.
Fatica.
Yeah. I was listening to him. He has a pretty active social media presence, and he said basically healthy people heal, wounded people hurt, and he's spot on. People who are healthy don't hurt others. They don't.
They don't try to drag.
Wounded people hurt people. Sometimes even I if I'm say insulted, I'll check my mouth because I'm quick to say throw a barb out. But why am I doing it? Because I'm hurt.
Right.
Wounded people hurt. Healthy people heal.
Can we bring it? But I would say this. Let's get a little theological here for a second. But you got to remember something. Underneath much of what we see around us, we know who's responsible for it. We know where the impulse comes from. It comes from Satan himself. Because what are we dealing with in this culture? We're dealing with lies. We started out talking in the first segment about lies, people standing on a podium, and they lie right to your face. We know they're lying. They continue to lie. Who's the father of lies? Satan. Why do we know that? Jesus said so. That's how we know that, okay? And here's the reason why I'm bringing it up, Joe. It's piggybacking on what you said, okay? He knew from the beginning he was doomed, okay? Because of a choice that he himself made. He didn't have to make it, but he made it. And he hates us so much that he wants to drag us down with him. Misery loves company. He knows he's going to hell, okay? He got cast out of heaven, knows he's going to hell, and then he wants to take every other creature, angel or human being, with him. It's the same impulse. I know I'm doing something wrong, but I want you to join me in doing something wrong. Well, I don't want to. I'm going to force you. I'm going to force you. And that's what they did to this woman. That's what they did to her. And here's another thing. Just during the course of the investigation, the Office of Civil Rights determined that the medical center maintains, the veins popping out of my head, Joe Resinello, maintains a policy that admits to circumstances where UVMMC can and will force staff on pain of adverse action or discipline to participate in abortions against their moral or religious objections. Is this a joke? We've had conscious rights in this country for 200 years. Now, all of a sudden, you can't object to participating in abortion Or else what? What culture are we living in? Cancel culture. You get fired. You can't put. So now, unlike the king who forced the Jews to eat pork and he basically flayed them and threw them into the fire along with their mother, okay? What do they do nowadays? Well, they don't do that. Maybe not yet, okay? Now they just take your job away. Well, you want to go against us? Fine, you could do that. You're not going to have a job. You're not going to be able to feed your kids. You're not going to be able to put food on the table. You're not going to be able to put gas in your car. You're not going to be able to heat your home. You will perform that abortion. You will kill that baby. These people are not evil. When we call them evil, you got a bunch of liberal Catholics says, you're so judgmental. This is not worthy of judgment? That, as Joe pointed out, they lied to this woman to get her to perform an abortion. And on top of it, their policy is they could give a damn about your conscience objections. You'll do it or you'll lose your job. These are disgusting people.
Well, let's
Joe.
break down why someone would do that.
Joe, let's take a break.
Okay.
Let's take a quick break. You're listening to The Frontline with Joe and Joe on the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We'll talk to you on the other side of the break. Welcome back, everyone, to The Frontline with Joe and Joe, Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. So I abruptly cut Joe off at the end of the last segment. With that, I'm going to hand it back over to him.
But let's look at why someone might do that, other than the fact clearly that they're on the wrong side of the argument. I mean, clearly, even in if you believe in choice and I believe in life, putting that aside, forcing someone to do something clearly is an American idea, particularly if it goes along with your conscience. But why would you do that? Maybe they had an abortion. Maybe they're guilty. We have a lot of friends, Joe and I, that are in the pro-life movement. We have obviously Father Imperato, who's very active. We also know many in the Franciscan Friars of the Renewal. They go every first Saturday. They, pray peacefully.
Sisters of Life.
Absolutely. Anyway, many of the most rabid pro-choice people, if you ask me, probably participated in an abortion. It's the difference between Peter and Judas. Both did something very wrong. Both betrayed God to his face. They saw the miracles and they betrayed him. But Peter said he was sorry and Judas didn't. You see, and when somebody doesn't say they're sorry, it manifests itself like an open wound. It becomes gangrenous. That is one of the things, to be honest with you, I know that intellectually, but I also know that when if I do something particularly that I'm embarrassed about, and when I go to confession, I know there's always that voice that says, don't confess it. Always. And that's the devil. Don't confess it. But intellectually, I know that if I don't confess it, it's like a wound that dirt is in it. It will get worse. And that is what a lot of these people are. They're wounded people. Again, the maxim. Healthy people heal, wounded people hurt. It's an absolute fact. It's a fact. People who are healthy, even from when you were a kid. I mean, I look back on people that I've known my whole life. People who act a certain way, there's a reason behind it. You see, that's in a way that doesn't excuse their behavior. Clearly, what they did was horrible, and there has to be consequences for that. The courts should not be dismissing a case like this, like Javier Becerra did. Clearly, that's the wrong approach. But when we look at that person, it's the proper way. Like if you look at Father Fidelis, who goes, if you ever want to follow someone who's very interesting, he's probably, if you ask me, a giant in the pro-life movement, maybe one of the biggest actively in America right now, located in New York. He recently was in Brooklyn, and I saw some pictures. I mean, people were blowing smoke in his face. it was so Christ-like how he didn't respond. Frankly, he turned the whole quote unquote conversation against them. You see, that's how we have to see people. You see, we have to look past some of this. Very hard. That's grace. I can't do that. I'm going to be honest with you.
Very difficult.
I can't. I'm being truthful with you. I don't, to be true, I'm probably not as close to God as he is. Matter of fact, I'd probably guarantee it.
When I've been down there with Father in the profession, believe me, what's in my heart is not in what Father Fidelis's heart is. He's got love in his heart. Me, I have I think those people are disgusting. All right, but I maintain my composure because he tells you to. Okay, but yeah, remember it's interesting, Joe, because when you're talking about, let's say, Father Fidelis, and again, he was being mocked. Okay. One dude was blowing smoke in his face. Okay. You get a bunch of angry little feminists yelling at him. All right. Reminded me of Jesus with Herod. When they sent Jesus to Herod, and Herod was like, do a miracle for me, and mocking him. And Jesus didn't say a word. Now, it's not because Jesus didn't love Herod, because obviously he did. Okay. But even God knew, what am I going to say to this guy?
Well, you can't.
What am I going to say? What are you going to say to some rabid little feminist who's screaming at the top of her lungs that it's my body, my choice, blah, blah, blah? Why, Joe? Why? Why do they get so angry? For the reasons that we're talking about. Well, how can you get angry with a bunch of people who are not even in front of the door of the abortion clinic? They're across the street, and all they're doing is praying. They're not talking to you. They're not addressing you. The sidewalk counselors are helping the women that are going in to try to turn them around. They're not talking to you. They're not harassing the death escorts that are escorting these women in to kill their babies. Okay? They're praying to God. Why is that so offensive to you? Because it reminds you that what you did was kill your child.
Well, I was going to say,
that's why.
It's actually, believe it or not, there's a very good book, which I highly recommend. It was very impactful on my life. It was excerpts from radio addresses and speeches from Saint Oscar Romero from El Salvador. It's called The Violence of Love. Why I bring that up is I highly recommend that you get that book. But why I bring that up is, believe it or not, Father Fidelis, that is almost violence to somebody. When you don't respond in that way, I'll be honest with you, that may be more provocative than if you punched them.
No, Joe, I hope, just to be clear, Father Fidelis will do more to pierce that person's heart.
Oh, there's no doubt.
If you punch them in the face,
that's what they expect.
I want that. Again, remember, you are dealing with rabid feminists and pro baby killing people. Okay. But you are also dealing with rabid Marxists. Okay. They want a violent reaction. They want it. They want Father Fidelis to turn around wearing his habit, his gray Franciscan habit, to punch them in the face. It ain't going to happen. And anybody there, somebody like me who might have a couple of two-tree anger issues, okay, ain't going to happen with me either. I'll put my hands on them, as Joe just said. Very good point. That makes them more angry. Why are they not reacting? Because I follow Jesus Christ. I'm here to pray for you, which, by the way, that offends them also. If you say you're praying for them, the argument is you're judging them. Well, you killed your baby, so you need prayers, and I'm willing to offer up prayers for you. All right, it's an act of love, not an act of hatred.
I'll tell you a story, like in my own life, that I always remember it. I can remember, we commute into New York City, and you park on the street. And this was years ago. I parked. I don't have a cell phone now, but it was before cell phones when you could take a picture. So I parked. I had maybe about 3 inches in front of someone's driveway. There was nowhere to park in the morning. And they had a basketball court in the driveway. So you couldn't get into the drive. First of all, they didn't use the driveway. And second of all, even if they wanted to get in, they could have. I came out of work. I have a ticket in front of my car. And I'm like, these SOBs called the police and gave me a ticket. And there was no reason for it. They could have got into their driveway, 1, and 2, they didn't even use it. And they still called. I was furious. So I storm home and I'm like, I'm going to take a picture. I'm going to fight this in court, blah, 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 blah. I'm furious. So I get just about to my house and I say, what am I doing? Turn around, get your ass back to your car, drive home, and that's it. So I walk all the way back. I cool down. As I walk back, the family's on the lawn. The guy is mowing the lawn, the son is there, and the wife. And they see me going towards my car. And this is how I know they called the police. Because all of a sudden they were like, it's on. So I walk to the car, and believe it or not, the woman confronts me. So she comes up to me. I look her straight in the face, and I just say, I'm sorry that I parked in front of your driveway. She was so taken back because she was waiting for me to start going nuts. She looks at me, I kid you not, her whole face changed. She all of a sudden just says, I didn't know who you were. I'm sorry. I never met her before in my life. She was so taken back. That is the power of Christ. It took me to walk. I had to walk 20 minutes before I got to that point because I wanted to kill her.
But do you know how many times? I mean, seriously, you look at the violence that goes on in America. Okay, do you know how many times an incident like that could turn into something that's just way out of control?
They were waiting for it, Joe.
Right?
They shut the lawnmower off. It was like they were preparing for war.
But what you did was disarm them. What they're armed with is your reaction, or what they think is going to be your reaction to this ticket. You disarm them by remembering what we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to do as disciples of Jesus Christ. Okay. You apologized on top of it. Not just, okay, forget it. No, you went, I'm sorry for parking. They're completely disarmed. They don't know where to go from there. They don't know where to go. I remember. But
I
remember you telling me that.
I would only do that. I don't bring that up because, to be honest with you, I didn't want to do that. And it took
because you want to start handing out beatings. You called the cops.
I wanted to go nuts.
You dirty rat. But it's like Lee J. Cobbin on the waterfront. You ratted on us, Terry.
I wanted to go nuts. But this is the decision to follow Christ. You have to go against who you are. That's not who I am. I'm going to be honest with you. But God's way is the right way. And it always leads to a better way. You see, that's why we're in where we're at in America. We've forgotten that. We have forgotten that. And that's why our politics stink. That's why our marriages stink. That's why our friendships stink. And that's why America is in the gutter. We have to get back to a place where we respect one another. And we find that with God.
Well,
only way.
Somebody ought to tell Biden and Becerra, two supposed faithful Catholics, that's what Jen Psaki tells us, that they need to go to confession. Roger Severino, and then we'll move on to the next story. Roger Severino, now he's the former director of the Office of Civil Rights. He basically said Biden Becerra's HHS directs DOJ to abandon lawsuit against Vermont hospital that forced a nurse to assist in abortion against federal conscience laws. Quote, such a politically motivated backstab means it's open season on pro-life doctors and nurses. We got to fight. We got to fight against this. We got to let them know. In other words, I read somewhere that basically, hey, listen, I don't trust anything Republicans say that they're going to do. They never do a damn thing. But they're threatening an impeachment of Becerra. Listen, from their mouth to God's ears, that dude should not be sitting where he's sitting. Not even just on the level of violating this woman's rights and dropping this case. He's just not qualified to be the head of the HHS.
He's not a doctor.
He's never had experience in healthcare. Why is he running the HHS? Because he's going after the Catholic Church. That's Becerra's position. That's what faithful, devout, whatever word Jen Psaki uses to describe disgraziad Biden. That's the guy who's supposedly so open-minded and everything. That's the guy who he's going to use to go after the Catholic Church. Well, Joe, with faithful Catholic friends like that, I don't know that we need any enemies.
It's funny. Tom Gugliotta said Joe walking into the driveway like Ray Liotta in The Goodfellas.
Right, with the gun. Hey, what do you want, man?
Dude, it's funny like this. It's like my friend's little brother in Belleville, New Jersey, who's completely out of his mind. I remember him telling the story, and he's like humongous too. Somebody was behind him in a car. They did something. Him and his friends got out of the car with 2 baseball bats and bashed in their windshield and went back in their car and drove away.
Yeah,
That's what you get in New Jersey when you park at someone's driveway.
Listen, on one level, we should do the right thing. Okay, I got yelled at by a cop over the weekend because I was picking up my wife from the airport, and the cop yelled at me. My immediate reaction was going to be, "Why are you?" Like I was going to yell, "Why are you yelling at me?" Instead, I rolled down the window and said, "Officer, my wife's right there. Where can I go to pick her up?" Pull down there. He goes, "Pull down there, and you can pick her up." Thank you, officer. In the meantime, I wanted to say, did you have to yell at me like that?
Well, the reason
but in Jersey, stuff like that could really...
It could go. And here's another thing. My wife's from Massachusetts, and I tell her this because I grew up with psychopaths. Some of them were crazy. That's a story. That's a real story. I always say this. You never know who you're dealing with. You see, sometimes people, like I say this, I have to watch myself sometimes, to be honest with you. But like to that point, you know, I've noticed just in general, people are on edge. Like in stores, in like parking lots, people are crazy.
Well, let me tell you, they were crazy in the COVID era. I've seen that they're even crazier. People are nuts. People don't even want to come near you. Yeah, I mean, even to the point where I don't care if you're socially distanced or whatever the hell they call it. Even if you just say hello to someone,
but they're nasty.
People are just out and out miserable. Like I always thought people in New York were pretty miserable. In the last year and a half, having to go in there every day. Other than when I was laid off for that first couple months of the lockdown. All right. People are miserable. All right. I mean, and it's like, what's up your butt, dude? In other words, I said hi to you, or I held the door open, or I said, have a nice day. What is this, a problem?
No, but it's just
like, does it enrage their liberal leftist sensibilities that somebody says, have a nice day?
No, but I just throw that out there. I think we're on a different like playing field than it was. Like whatever it is, whether it's the COVID thing, whether it's the social media. I mean, when we were kids, obviously there was no social media.
We played baseball and football,
right? And
basketball.
Yeah, played outside, played hockey in the
ate
street,
dirt.
And liked it. But like it's just a different world, and you got to watch yourself. You got to watch yourself because I'm going to be honest with you. There are some bad people out there. I mean, like, to be truthful with you, and they'll hurt you.
I told my wife, I said, my wife had a nasty habit of smashing down her horn when while she's driving. And I told her, I said, babe, listen, don't do that again. Don't do that. And for the reason you're saying,
I'm telling you.
I said, babe, people are nuts. They'll get out of their car.
Oh, yeah.
They'll smash your window. I said, and then fast forward, we watched the movie with Russell Crowe. I think the movie's called Unhinged. Now it goes deeper into his character, but what sets him off in the beginning of the story is that this woman does that. She smashes down the horn and he's behind, and he spends the rest of the movie like torturing her. But anyway, aside from the Hollywood version of it, okay, people are nuts.
Oh, there's no doubt.
People are nuts. You know what I mean? Like they'll look for any excuse to start throwing fists. That's the world we live in.
Or even worse.
Right.
I mean, like, truthfully.
And thank God my wife doesn't do that anymore. She really listened to me. So if she does use her horn, it's like that tap, that boop, boop, this way, Well, and even that I'd be afraid to do.
But again, that's, using our, listen, we're not perfect. None of us are perfect. Trust me. I call people stupid all the time. Sometimes
we do it on the show.
Yeah.
On the Crusade channel. Always on air and always online.
Sometimes I do it with my kids in the car. And my kids correct me, believe it or not.
Daddy, why'd
you don't call people stupid. But I mean, like, this is stuff you got to be mindful of it because, and frankly, again, check yourself. That this is why at the end of the day, as a good Catholic, we try. Doesn't mean we're perfect. I'm not perfect. Ask my wife. Recollect. How was your day? What did you do wrong today? Think about it for a minute. Go to frequent confession. It keeps you accountable and it makes you better. Isn't that what it's about? Being a practicing Catholic. It's not like being in like a fraternity in college where you're ticking boxes. It's about growing in virtue. It's about being more Christ-like.
Aquinas called it, I believe, developing good habits. In other words, good habits lead to virtuous behavior. In other words, bad habits obviously lead to sin. In other words, yes, you have to. We're human beings. We're the victim of habits sometimes. So start to consciously develop good habits. Talking about getting angry. I used to get angry at everything. My brother used to tell me all the time when I was on the phone, I must have had an argument a day. when I was living with my mom years ago. He said, do you argue with everybody? Do you have to get so angry? Now, we get angry on the show. I mean, it's righteous anger. There's a lot of things to be angry about, but I used to get angry about stupid things. But I needed my brother to tell me, why are you doing that? Why? And then, of course, I needed God to switch my gears a little bit and say, no, don't get angry at every little thing you hear. But it's called developing a good habit. The good habit in this case is not being angry at everything and everybody. You know, it's the way we should be. Because there's a lot, Joe. I'm telling you, I mean, it's always been bad. It's getting a lot worse. Like I said, I don't know if we can blame COVID for it the last year and a half. It's really gotten worse, though.
Oh, I notice it.
Like
I see it in people. I see it in people. I could see it in their eyes. Like, particularly, I do a lot of the shopping in my house, and I'll go to ShopRite. You know, like a lot of times I go early morning on a Friday before even I sign in at work. This place opens at 7 a.m. I bang it all out. No one's in there. But if the people, I could see it in people. I call it like the Jersey stare. They got their cart. They're pushing through. No one's stopping.
You're not getting in my way.
I'm just like, dude, you're friggin' crazy. like I can if you saw like the Charlie Brown, like in my head, I'm like, dude, you're out of your friggin' mind.
Let's end this segment right there. Okay. We got to take a break. You're listening to the Crusade Channel. You're home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, and Kennedy Profession. From sun up to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. Stick around. We got one more segment left. Welcome back, everyone, to the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello, way in the breach on the Crusade Channel. Always on air and always online at thecrusadechannel.com, the last live radio station standing. And remember, we encourage everyone to become a Founders Pass member. Okay, you get access to all of the amazing content on the Crusade Channel. Just a couple of examples. These two examples alone would make me become a Founders Pass member. The only thing is, I already am. So, but Si Qua Virtus, Episode 5, The Culture War 101, with our friend John Horvat, the Kennedy Profession, The Tale of Two Republicans, DeSantis versus Rubio. These have to be amazing conversations. You need to be in on them, so you need to become a member of the Crusade Channel. Having said that, like I said, we got one more segment left. Now, this is the thing that bothers me. We talked in the last segment about being forced to do a thing, okay? Now, I mean, there's just so many levels there when you say, you know, being forced to perform an abortion. Here's another one that, again, gets in my heart. I don't want to have hatred, but when I hear stories like this, I'm like, who are these people, Joe Resinello? And in this case, we're talking about the teachers' unions. Let's go there. Let's go there, all right, and talk about their treatment of parents.
Spencer Lundquist reports on this one. The NEA, which is the National Education Association, it's the largest union in America. They're suing a mom who asked about political material in kindergarten. Yes, you heard that right. The NEA is suing a mother in Rhode Island who asked what her daughter would be taught in her kindergarten class. Nicole Solis, the target of the NEA's lawsuit, is now fighting back against the nation's largest public sector union with the help of the Goldwater Institute, which described itself as a leading free market public policy research and litigation organization that is dedicated to empowering all Americans to live freer, happier lives. Now, the brazen and unprecedented act of intimidation by the NEA will not stand. That's what Goldwater had to say. John Riches is representing Solis. This is what he said. He said, Nicole Solis is entitled to know what her daughter's school is teaching in the classroom. She's entitled to ask questions, and she does not deserve to face legal action just for asking questions, basically, that a parent would ask. Solis is up against the NEA, which Goldwater Institute calls a veritable Goliath, which represents over 2.3 million people nationwide and has a budget of over 3 million people.
$300 million.
Yes. So here, sorry about that.
No, that's right.
My bad. But here's the thing. Why can't a parent question what their kid, which is a student, is being taught? Listen, they pay taxes too. I mentioned earlier on the show my friend who is a deacon, who's also a vice principal in a public high school in New Jersey. And he tells his teachers, listen, That's agenda driven. Teach your subject. What is the problem? What is the problem? And you know something, again, step back from your political tribe for a second. How are you cool with this? Now, listen, I'm a Catholic. I don't send my kids to public school. But if I did, I went to public school. I went to public grammar school. Don't my parents have a say? They pay taxes. And here's another thing. Do I have a right in a public school to shove my Catholic faith down your throat? No, I don't, actually. I don't have a right to shove my Catholic faith down your throat anywhere. God doesn't even do that. So why do you get the permission, or basically the free reign, to do that to me and my kids?
Because that's how elitists think. How dare you question what we teach your child? Your child will not learn. Learn implies education. They're not getting an education. So I use the word loosely, but they'll learn what we tell them they need to learn, like the 1619 Project, or all white people are hateful simply because of the color of their skin. And that you as little kids, you should hate each other if one is white and one is black. And a mom turns around and says, "What are you teaching my kid? I pay tax money. You don't have a professional existence if it wasn't for me." And these scumbags, because that's what they are. That's what they are. God forgive me. They're scumbags. They're suing this woman. It's one thing to try to shut her down, but they're trying to set a precedent, which will shut down any parent. This ain't going to stand up in court.
No way.
No way this is going to stand up in court.
That's why
It's what Joe always says. They've overplayed their hand. You're suing a parent? What's a judge going to say about that, Joe?
Step back from like how you vote. And I don't think enough people do that. I love the gentleman from South Carolina, the senator. He had the Police Reform Act. What the heck?
Why am I drawing a blank?
I can't think of his
name.
Tim Scott.
Tim Scott.
Common ground. Common sense is common ground. And I think he has something there when he says that. Common sense says a parent has every right to question what you are teaching my kid, particularly if it's utterly and absolutely offensive. And again, schools, that's not the way I see your roles. You ever hear that term, stay in your lane? Well, stay in your lane. I'm the parent. But obviously, again, I've been around. That's not the way things work. Clearly, there's an agenda. That's, if you ask me, where the Democratic Party has gone wrong. They're in power now, and I got news for you. This may go on for a lot longer than we think. Hopefully not. Ultimately, though, all regimes, look at history, they collapse. Look at Germany, for instance. Germany had a really bad 20th century.
Horrible.
For about 80 years. It began in about the early, maybe 1910.
World War I.
Crushed. World War I. Their frigging, their financial system fell apart. Basically, the Deutschmarks were worth nothing. You had a brain drain after World War II. Your country got leveled. Then it was divided and occupied for how long? And it took almost 100 years to come out of it. Look at Poland, how long they suffered. Long time. Look at the outcome of Poland. Poland is no country is perfect, and you're never going to have, Christ's reign on earth. Even when Christ was on the earth, when he walked on the earth, not everyone agreed with him, and they saw the miracles. Well, we're never going to have a perfect state on earth ever. But Poland is a lot more Catholic than America. Why? Because they suffered. Ultimately, what I think is going to happen is America is what Cardinal George said in Chicago. God rest his soul. He said, "I will die in my bed. The cardinal after me." Obviously, it's not going to be the cardinal.
It's not going to be Supich.
But he's just using that as a point of reference. Will go to prison. The cardinal after him will die. And the cardinal after that will rebuild society from the ashes.
Well, Cardinal George died in his bed. Cardinal Pell did go to prison. Right?
Yes, he did.
Maybe not a Cardinal of Chicago. Cardinal Pell did go to prison.
18 months.
All right. And was exonerated. Okay. Exonerated. All right. And yeah, Cardinals, faithful Cardinals, they'll start to die soon. It might not happen in America. It might not.
It's happening in China.
All right. But yeah, China, that wonderful country that we're supposed to be all tolerant of. all right, and do business with, and let LeBron James go and make another $100 million with, that never abuses anybody's civil rights or human rights. No, they don't do that. You'll see cardinals getting clipped in China.
But this
no
is
question about it.
But this is where basically God works. God's hand is in everything. His hand is in everything, and he sees everything. Maybe it will be through this trial that we will see a change, because like it's funny. I read the Magnificat in the morning, and I was telling my wife just recently, it talked about basically the exodus of the Jews from Egypt, and they didn't trust the word of God, and they didn't trust Moses. So what happens? He goes, "You don't trust me? 40 years you're going to suffer, and everyone's going to die in the desert." God said that to the Jews in flight, because what? They weren't listening to him. They weren't trusting him. So he put them through a period of time. That's, if you ask me, what we're seeing. I think ultimately, because it's about salvation.
Father Rutler says all the time, he's like, this Christianity that we have nowadays is, you got Christianity, Christ without the cross and all that. But one comment he made along the lines of what Joe's saying, God loves us. God is a good father. That's why he punishes us. He loves us too much not to punish us. What kind of father is it, Joe Resinello? You're a father of 4, technically a father of 5, all right? But one's still in the womb. What kind of father lets their kids just do whatever they want?
Well, it's not, you can't have a house.
You're not going to have it. You're going to have any order. You're going to have any joy. They're going to have any happiness. All right, but you get these tolerant parents. Oh, it's just going to be wonderful when little Johnny comes home and says he wants to be little Janie. I'm not exaggerating. Kate Winslet, the actress, said that. I love that I live in a world where my son or my daughter can come home and be anything they want. Well, then you don't love your child, Kate. The father who loves his child, when his child comes home and says, "Daddy, my teacher told me that I could be a girl. I want to be a girl." The father says, "Get out of here." All right, and punishes him. Well, not punishes him for that, but steps up and does something about it. You don't let your kids just do whatever you want. What kind of father does that? And yes, America deserves to go through what we're going through right now. We deserve it, Joe. I'll let you go. We deserve it because of allowing 50 years of legalized child murder.
But the thing is, when you don't listen, there are consequences. It's like you either learn, like, again, using the reference of I'm a father, I just said this recently, you either learn things in your house or you learn them on the street. And the people on the street are not going to be as merciful as your parents, like the police or bad people, when you do the wrong thing. I mean, this morning I went to get bagels and I saw this young girl. She probably was like 17 years old, parked right next to me. I was going into the bagel shop. The way she was dressed, and she was with her boyfriend. I mean, I just said to myself, damn, that is so sad. It's so sad how she's going to learn horrible lessons in life. She clearly didn't learn those in her house. You see, that's what America is. It's happening in America. We didn't learn the lessons. We didn't listen to the commandments. We didn't listen to even our own Constitution. We're not listening to our conscience. And as a result, there will be suffering. And why? Why? People say, why am I suffering? It's purification.
Right.
It's simply purification. And when we come through it, you're better for it. I think about that all the time, even myself. I used to say that to myself, like, I get it, God. Why? There's almost a running joke in my house between me and my wife. We say that all the time. Why? Why? You know what God's answer is? Because you're not ready. You think you are, you're not. You're not holy enough to come into heaven. That's why you're here. And that's why we're constantly being purified. But America will be purified, to be honest with you. To be honest with you, it may not even be a country. Who knows? I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, gosh, countries come, countries go. It might go on for another 500 years. It might not go on for 500 days.
Right. You listen to some conservatives. They try to let you know that America, or they try to pass off this idea America's supposed to last 1,000 years. We're not the Roman Empire. We're not the Roman Empire. I know Rome was pagan. We were never as great as the Roman Empire. Okay. At the time, the Roman Empire represented high culture. Again, it was an ancient culture, and certainly they did things in Rome that we would find abhorrent nowadays, okay? And even after the fall of Rome, people woke up, obviously, because on the ashes and the rubble of the Roman Empire, the church, the Catholic Church, rebuilt Europe, okay? But what's so special about America? What, we can't fall? Spain only lasted 200 years. They were the most powerful country in the world, okay? You look at some of these empires. The British Empire fell. The Ottoman Empire fell. Empires fall. The American Empire is going to fall sooner. Might happen in our lifetimes, might not. Why do people suggest that, we're so special? We kill babies like China and North Korea do. In the last trimester, at the moment of birth, you could legally kill a baby. Governor Northam said you could even kill a baby after the baby's born. That's what he said. And we're blessed by God. Well, I got news for you, Sean Hannity. That doesn't strike me as something, activities that we do in America that are deserving of God's blessings.
Well, there's a lot of good people in America. I mean, I have them on my own block. Very good people. I mean, we have to be one of them. We have to be a light. That's what it means to be Catholic. We have to show people the way by our life, animated through the sacraments and prayer. But ultimately, it's not about politics. Who's right, who's wrong. It's about salvation. Salvation. We worry about things that ultimately mean nothing in the end. Nothing. 0. 0.0. No one cares ultimately on their deathbed. What they care about is when God says, good and faithful servant, come and inherit the kingdom. That's the goal.
I want to make a distinction, though, Joe Arsenal, just so we're clear. And I know you know this, okay? But a story like this story about the teachers union that's suing Nicole Solas, this parent who questioned them, okay? This is not a political story. This is an example of the spiritual battle that we're in. Who's the victim in this story? Nicole Solas? No, her child. That's where it's the spiritual battle. They want to corrupt the child without the parent being able to say, I'm not going to allow you to corrupt my child. This is spiritual. It's not cultural. It's not political. This is an example of the war that we're in, okay? That's why they need to be defeated, all right? The devil's a bully, and his minions on earth, they're bullies. She says it. This is what Nicole Solas said. She said, quote, the NEA is so determined to push its political agenda that they're willing to expose themselves in a court of law for who they really are. Here's the key. An association of bullies eager to challenge a stay-at-home mom who simply wanted to know what her daughter was being taught. Now, Joe's right. Ultimately, political squabbles, taxes, immigration, things like that, they can get to a spiritual level. This is part and parcel of the spiritual battle right here. The protection of our children. And telling these statists, these elitists, these demoniacs, all of them, the answer's no. And they're going to lose in court, Joe Arsenal.
Oh, there's no question.
They're going to lose in
I'll
court.
be truthful with you. Again, I point to that all the time. Obama had the worst record in the Supreme Court of any modern president. Look it up. And also, a lot of the Supreme Court outcomes were 9-0, 8-1. I predict that Biden will have a worse record when it's all said and done.
Well, he hasn't done anything. I mean, seriously.
Well, he hasn't had time. Like, it's got to bubble up.
Oh no! Hopefully it bubbles. And again, too. I mean, we're in a now getting back to the politics for a second. Okay, we're in a bad position as conservatives. Okay, we sat here at the Crusade Channel, Joe and I. Okay, we've been on Crusade how long?
2 years.
2 years or so. We've been doing our show for the last 3 years. Okay, and we seriously, you know what? The best thing about Donald Trump more than anything else, Joe. What do we say?
Judges.
We're getting let down by them. We're getting let down by them. Championed Amy Coney Barrett. She's a letdown, at least so far. Kavanaugh apologizes for his concurring with the majority in Clayton versus Bostock, the homosexual case. Why are you apologizing, Justice Kavanaugh? They don't need an apology from you. You ruled as a matter of law. All right. I would tell him to kick rocks. Okay, but leaving that aside, what do you apologize? Gorsuch? These are dyed-in-the-wool conservatives. We know that they're going to stand up if the case came to the Supreme Court? Do we know they're going to stand up for Nicole Solis? Do we? Do we? I know Thomas and Alito will. Okay. Maybe Roberts. Okay. Don't even know about him too much. But this is what we hoped for with Donald Trump. And he gave us these duds. Well, they better straighten their asses out. And they better get with the people that brought him to the dance.
Well, that's true. But ultimately, and this is something we've said from the very beginning, politics is downstream from culture. We have to change the culture. And that begins with us. That's why we do a monthly rosary rally. That's why we practice our faith. We practice our faith so we show by the example of our lives the joy and the goodness of Christ, where it's attractive to people. It has to be attractive. You know, I think of it this way. Would you join a club if everyone's miserable? Everyone's miserable. No, I wouldn't.
It should be the question you ask if you think about joining the Democrat Party.
But
They're
just
all
a club.
miserable.
Well, the same goes for the Catholic faith. If you want to be, if we proclaim the truth and say this is the way, the truth, and the life, and we're not joyful, we're not basically attractive, as in our life isn't an example, why would anyone want to join?
Right.
I'm telling you this right now. This is a very practical and common sense level. It begins with us. We will change the culture. Look at the lives of the saints. That's how it's done. You want to change the politics? We got to change the culture. That begins with us being in the world, but not of the world, animated by prayer, animated by the sacraments, and we'll get it done.
Joe, I want to just cut you off there, okay, because we only have a few minutes left, and I do want to talk about the story and end on a hopeful note, okay, that Megan Rapinoe isn't the only person out there who's representing the Americans in the Olympics. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe in the last couple minutes. Talk about a couple of girls that are a couple of shining examples of a hopeful sign in this current cultural abyss that we're living in.
He's talking about the hurdlers, Cindy McLaughlin and Delilah Muhammad. They broke a world record in the 400 hurdles. And this is what McLaughlin had to say. I don't deserve anything, but by grace through faith, Jesus has given me everything. Records come and go. The glory of God is eternal.
Let me cut you off. What's going to happen to this poor young girl, and she's a champion. She's a champion, okay? Accomplished a lot. Her and Delilah, okay? What's going to happen to her is what happened to Tim Tebow. All of a sudden, they're going to get not paid attention to, or they weren't really that good to begin with, okay? By the way, Joe, and you could comment on this. Tell me, Joe, and tell the audience out there at the Crusade Channel, why is the media hiding this story?
Well,
kind of don't like that message,
obviously,
right?
It goes against the narrative. But you know something, to your point, who cares? Who's our audience? Jesus is our audience. Who cares if they forget about you? Do good for good's sake. Who cares? This girl is what America is about, if you ask me. We got to get back to that. And that begins with us. I'll be honest with you. I just said this to my wife. People like this, that one wrestler, so gracious and thankful. When you juxtapose them against some of the other ridiculous
Megan Rapinoe.
Why are you there, in all honesty? And if you ask me, they simply overshadowed them. This is what the Olympics is about. This is, if you ask me, what America is about. This is what we have to recapture. It begins with you and me.
See, this is what we're going through, too, because we're so used to woke sports, all right? These girls ain't woke. They're not victims, okay? Delilah had to battle COVID, okay, earlier this year, okay? And she went, and by the way, this race, they set the world record in the same race. That means they both ran faster than the world record, and one beat the other by literally a half a second, okay? Overcoming adversity, okay? Certainly being two girls. I don't know what Delilah's religion is. Maybe she's Muslim. I don't know, okay? But let's assume she is. But to take the time to praise God, okay, is what they both did. NBC doesn't want to hear it. The disgraziads in the media don't want to hear it. But they'll focus on that little I don't even want to use the word because we're Catholic men. Megan Rapinoe with her purple hair and her arrogant smirk. And she gets on her knees. And you know what they did, Joe Resinello? And you know what that U.S. women's soccer team is? And Megan Rapinoe? Losers. And you know what? You know what Sydney McLaughlin and Delilah Muhammad are? They're winners.
Agreed.
They're winners. That's the example that they set. And it shows you, again, that there are hopeful signs out there. Joe and I got to go because our time is at an end. And we want to thank you all for joining us and listening to us at the Crusade Channel, your home for the Mike Church Show, Crusade Channel News, the Barrett Brief, Kennedy Profession. From sunup to sundown, the Crusade Channel is the last live radio station standing. And from Joe and I, remember that our conversation is your conversation, and that conversation is going on everywhere. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you for listening.